we start, we'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land here in so-called Australia, where this podcast is being recorded. Sovereignty wasn't ceded, and we walk on stolen ground.
Yeah.
And this is Baijiu Billabong. Welcome. It's me, Reezy. Tamir's here, and we have a guest.
Do you want to introduce yourself, or?
Yeah.
Do I want to introduce myself?
Yeah.
All right. I don't know. My name's Bri. I'm a communist in so-called Australia. Yeah. Also unemployed as well, so living the job snob life.
Actually, we can talk about that unemployment thing with AUWU later if you want. But anyway, there was that article that Bri brought up with that Socialist Alliance. I thought it was a bloody joke.
Oh, Socialist Alternative.
Socialist Alternative.
Sorry, my bad. Yeah. The Trots, right?
Yeah. One of them at least.
So they have a publication in Australia called Red Flag. It's like their official mouthpiece, I guess, for those outside Australia.
Yeah. And they really don't focus on the right issues. Like it says here, communists must support uprisings everywhere. And it was published on the 31st of August 2020 by Daniel Taylor. He looks very much like a red flag type of dude, I have to say. Yeah, he's like with Karl Marx and like Lenin, they have supported Hong Kong and Belarus, and you know, it's just weird. Then he goes on to Palestinians and Uyghurs, and it's stupid. Like, you know, I don't want to go into like Godwin's like, you know, law, but you know, would you support an uprising, say like Hitler's beer push in 1920s or Pinochet? You know what I mean? Like, it's just such a generalization. Yeah.
Yeah, communists must support uprising everywhere. No analysis required. If there's an uprising, then Karl Marx would have supported it.
Yeah. It's just so, I don't know. Why do they keep talking about these things? These you know, people. They seem to care more about overthrowing governments all around the world than what's actually happening in Australia. And there's like no leftist unity. Yeah.
They don't have anything outside of instant revolution, and I can sympathize with that, but they do not. They see the world as very black and white, I guess. There's these protests are not black and white. They're very complicated, and some protests, like, a government can be unpopular to more than just leftists or to Marxists. It can be unpopular to, you know, religious people. There's lots of different reasons to be unhappy with the government.
Yeah. I mean, it could be a left-wing government that's being like overthrown by the right-wing people, like say in Bolivia. Should we support that? Or some lady brings up a huge Bible and starts denouncing the indigenous people in Bolivia?
It'd be interesting to see what they actually said about Bolivia at the time, because you know, in sort of liberal and soft left circles, there was a lot of support for the protests in Bolivia, and most of those people have gone back and well, not most, some of them have gone back and said they admitted they were wrong.
Yeah, I mean, Bri made a pretty good point before we started recording about the tankies things. And they bring up the 1956 Hungarian Revolution, which is where the term tanky kind of actually started, I think, was it? Or...
Yeah, that's like what people were referring to. But like, I only ever saw tanky really being used on like online left, so it's like doesn't really exist. And then suddenly it like it's like been starting to enter like real life, and like I guess like liberals will start using it as well to just disregard like anyone on the left. So it's like, I don't know, it's like this term that like should never really have been used, and it was just used for like really like petty infighting online, and now it's just like being used like to just disregard a lot of people's like political views and stuff like that. So it's like if you like support China against Hong Kong, well then no one has to listen to your opinion because you're just a tanky or whatever.
Yeah, it's a great way of just dismissing someone straight up.
Yeah. I mean, I use it quite a bit when I use lib a lot, lib. So basically, if someone's less authoritarian than you on the left, they're lib. But if they're more authoritarian, they're tanky. And you've won the argument. You don't have to talk anymore. And you're like,
yeah.
I mean, just the fact that they talk about Hong Kong as like the first kind of revolution in his article, it really annoys me because that's like the most obvious color revolution you can think of. There's the whole NED, National Endowment for Democracy funding that's been out and open, the US flags and everything. And they're like, yeah, I think we need to support these guys. I really like their how they want to go back to colonialism and go back to the UK. Yeah, it's definitely a communist movement.
It's interesting just bringing up like how Socialist Alternative had the like the no tankies allowed or whatever it was called, kind of like conference against like Marxist-Leninists. Like first of all, it's like, why are we even doing this in the middle of like a huge crisis when we should be working together? But just even like moving beyond that, I was just like looking up, like I just Googled like Stalin red flag, and it came up with 2 articles about Stalin, and they're both by Daniel Taylor. So he's spent like the past.
Who is Daniel Taylor? Like, what's his background? Do you know, or have you met him?
No, I haven't met him, but I just like when I looked at like when you click on his like on like his name on red flag and it brings up his bio, it says that he's the Victorian Socialist candidate for the Moreland City Council, which is interesting because like this year, Socialist Alliance, this is going to get so convoluted for people who aren't like that active in politics, but it's like a mess. And you've got like Socialist Alliance was a part of Victorian Socialists, and like Victorian Socialists was like it was like an electoral body for a bunch of like socialist groups to try and get a socialist into parliament essentially.
Right, they had a bit of a thing going on for a moment last 18 months or so, right?
Well, like the point about Daniel Taylor being a candidate for Moreland City Council is that Socialist Alliance left Victorian Socialists because they felt, when in their article they say that like,
were they too tanky?
No, they were saying that like Socialist Alternative was stacking votes and like blocking motions from Socialist Alliance. So Socialist Alliance left, and like the elected member.
What's the difference in ideology? Sorry to interrupt. Between those 2 groups?
I wouldn't really be able to say. Like they're both like Trotskyist orgs, but I think it like just comes down to like the organizational differences. Like Socialist Alternative is more like organizing like amongst students. Yeah, but so like the under Victorian Socialist Sue Bolton, who was like a representative for Moreland City Council, she was the elected candidate for Moreland City Council under Victorian Socialists, and she's a part of Socialist Alliance, but Socialist Alliance left, and then Sue Bolton is trying to get elected in Moreland City Council under just Socialist as like an independent or under Socialist Alliance, and now Daniel Taylor is the candidate from Victorian Socialists. So that's just a bit of interesting local politics.
I mean, if they
Melbourne.
combined, I mean, imagine the power they'd had. Like, they already got one candidate on. They could like have a very firm base in Moreland. Yeah, it just sounds really weird that they just keep splintering. But that's
well, from outside of Victoria, I'm up here in Queensland. It did, to me, it looked like it was a party that was offering better leftism than the Greens. Basically, it was the next one along. If you wouldn't vote for Labor, you wouldn't vote for Greens. You knew that those guys were there. That's how it felt up here, anyway. So.
Do you mean Socialist Alternative?
No, this the political wing, Victorian Socialists.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's kind of I agree with that then. But I don't know. It's funny. Like I don't want to just like shit on socialists. Am I allowed to say shit?
Yeah, go ahead. You
Yeah,
can say whatever you want.
Cool.
I mean,
Cool.
all I know about
Because
Socialist
I
Alternative
swear so much, so I just
was
wanted to
No,
like
it's
make
cool.
sure.
there was that
Yeah.
person. Who was that? You know that lady, the Vietnamese girl that was like made the fake Chow Collective parody account, the L Collective or something.
Oh, yeah.
I
Oh,
slightly remember some
yeah,
parody
and I
account.
pointed her out. And you were like, yeah, she's in one of those Trotsky things, and I'm like, and all she ever does all day on Twitter is she goes and attacks like every single like country that the US hates. And you're like, if she didn't have those labels on, she just look exactly the same as, say, some pro-US government operator. Yeah, it's just weird.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I don't really want to like shit on socialist alternatives like too much, but it's funny how many people I talk to who are around my age, so like early to mid 20s, will say that they like leave high school and they're like already starting to become like more radicalized and like sympathetic towards more like far left ideologies and stuff. And then when you get to it, when you become like a student and you get to like uni campus, the most far left organization that you meet is Socialist Alternative. And the amount
Yeah,
of
and they're
people,
upfront too.
yeah, the amount of people who just immediately get turned off of politics and far left politics because of Socialist Alternative being their first experience is like, it's just crazy. Like, yeah, like myself included, and just a whole bunch of people will be like, I had this experience where I just
Everybody
decided,
has a socialist alternative story, even here in Brisbane. Like, everyone has something that happened to them, you know. It's so funny.
Yeah, well, like, did they try to recruit you or something? Or
All right, good. Well, that was sort of my introduction as well. I came down, I actually followed a girl who was a member um, when I was living the Sunshine Coast, and I was like totally, I was interested in politics, but like pretty dumb, to be honest. So they were my introduction to actual Marxism. Um, but they're just so weird, and the way they talk to me, and they're just creepy, and they're full on, and it's cultish. And the person who introduced me to them, she left quite soon. She found them to be cultish as well. And sometimes I'll meet someone, I'll start talking about politics, at the bar or whatever. A young person, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, they did this to me, or they did that to me."
damn.
So because I actually think, like, I don't know, their theory is not too bad, but it's just its application in the real world, which is it's to me it seems naive. But
Yeah, like I looked up
I
this Daniel Taylor guy's articles, and it's talking about the US half the time, and I'm talking about like how the Democrats are doing, and you're like you get like trillion articles about the Democrats in the US. Why are they talking about it? It's very naive. Like, do you think you can actually get any change from that? They should be
yeah
focusing on Australian issues with like we've had a recession, 8% of a recession, and nearly 10% of the people in Australia are unemployed. So those are big issues at the moment.
I I very recently went from being like on the fence with these guys to now being like really really annoyed by them. So some of the stuff we've seen lately, I don't know, is there any possibility it's a bunch of cops running it, or you know
Controlled
some other?
opposition.
Yeah, I know me and you have been accused of that lately. So um,
Yeah.
it I'm just wondering, like, why are they so bad? Why are they so? They're perfect at turning someone off Marxism and channeling them towards liberalism of Labour, and to a lesser extent the Greens.
Yeah, that's how I joined Labour as well, because I got turned off by them. But yeah.
That's
Ah,
actually, I also know someone who joined the ALP after just failing to organise with Socialist Alternative and having a bad experience.
Yeah, I mean, the idea was like when I was young, it was like Labour at least got things done and got into, power sometimes, once a blue moon now. And these guys just sort of, they just want to care about random stuff all around the world, and they want to look sort of hip. It's more like what they look like in front of other people, and instead of getting things done. Yeah, I'm not saying that like more communist organizations get things done, but at least they try to focus on the correct issues. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, sorry, go.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, even if they were like posting all these articles about like how Hong Kong protests are just shining beacon of hope or whatever, if they were like actually organizing within good faith and like taking on like united front tactics with other organizations and not like attacking like people ideologically, then or like trying to like I don't know stack votes and stuff, then it wouldn't be as big of a deal that they have like these kind of I don't know, the communists must support uprisings everywhere articles. But because it's like if they're not going to actually like organize in good faith with other organizations, then they're just like become like this kind of like stain on the left.
Yeah.
That might be a bit harsh, but
and they
I'm
always
sure there's
side.
good people in Socialist Alternative, but yeah.
But they always seem to end up siding with the imperialists. It's just really annoying. It's like they don't need any more help, and plus you don't really help them at all because they think you're also super left and weird. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Like on this like article that this Mr. Daniel Taylor wrote, how Stalinism distorted Marxism. Like one of the sentences is about like how like Stalin like it was like this like blight on like humanity or something. And then it's like and how like he didn't achieve anything. And then one of the sentences is like saying that like I guess like Stalinist policies influenced the trajectory of the anti-colonial rebellions, many of which looked to Stalinized USSR for help and guidance. And then it said that it burdened and delayed the emergence of new radical social movements in the Western countries from the 1960s onwards. So Stalinism is bad because it helped anti-colonial movements but burdened the West. Like that's just a weird stance to take.
I mean, Frank Hampton, he wasn't killed by a Stalinist, was he? Or did I get that wrong? And all those yellow leftist, leaders. Was Pinochet supported by the Stalinists? I can't remember that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but because there was no radical movements in the West, it's all Stalin's fault.
Yeah, I mean, there are notably really bad authoritarian regimes like Pol Pot and he's in Cambodia, but like honestly, they seem to just ignore what America has done every single time, and it's really annoying. Yeah, and I don't know what's the whole point of this, and yeah, talking about this, can you tell us a bit about the Communist Party, Australian Communist Party? What's the difference? Or
the difference is just like there was just a split last year in 2019. I don't know. I guess just like
they just split.
Oh, it's just like I don't know how much I can like really say or should really say except like I guess there's like different tactics like used in the two parties. There's like there's like not that much difference, I don't think, obviously ideologically, because both are communist parties.
We talked about the Whip Warrior guy, and you said they were the other party, and the guys went to protest the Whip Warrior.
Oh, in Sydney.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the Australian Communist Party. Yeah.
Right. That's how I found out about it, through one of their Facebook posts, because I saw they were there out protesting. I think someone got taken away by the cops, so they must have been protesting pretty well.
I thought they were like less pro-China. Are those guys, are they? Or are they more pro-China? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think... I'm trying to remember that I think there's like one article they've written maybe about China, and yeah, it's not like... I don't know. I can't remember what their position is, except for that, like, it didn't seem to be pro-China. But
They're
yeah,
probably just anti-racism, I guess, is the bare minimum. So I imagine that was the point of the protest.
There was the Marxist-Leninism version of the parties as well. Anyway, it's very very confusing.
Or all the parties.
Yeah,
Like
there's
all
also
the
the
different
Marxist.
Communist parties.
I think there's a CPA ML.
Yeah. So the history of like communist parties in Australia is very messy, and like if you first like decide you want to join a communist party and you're trying to like understand all these differences and like what's going on, it's like can be overwhelming to understand. But the short version of it is essentially that the original Communist Party was founded in like 1920, and then there was a split in 1963, 64, I can't remember, around like the Sino-Soviet split, and the Sino-Soviet split kind of like rippled into the Communist Party of Australia, and then the Maoists and like the people who supported USSR split, and so the Maoists went and formed CPA-ML like in the early 60s, and then 10 years after that there was like another split, and the Socialist Party of Australia was formed. And then so at this point we have like CPA-ML, SPA, and CPA. And then in 1991, the original CPA liquidated, and the Socialist Party of Australia changed its name to like honour its original roots to Communist Party of Australia, and so that's like the original CPA. So not the original CPA. That's the CPA that exists now. So yeah. It's extremely messy.
So there was a joke that used to go around that when the CPA disbanded in 91, that all that was left was 3 ASIO agents.
I've never heard that joke.
Well, something along those lines, yeah. So I don't think it was taken too seriously by that point, that particular party anyway.
Well, it's interesting. Well, I find it at least interesting that around the time that all these splits happened, ASIO was like heavily investigating. Obviously, like they would be like throughout the time, like the whole existence of like the communist movement. But around this time, I think in like the early 60s, ASIO published this report on the policies and programs that the Communist Party had for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, including like releasing all Aboriginal people from prison, and like giving back like the whole of like the North and West Australia, like back to Aboriginal people. It's like all these like really like I guess like radical positions, at least to take in the 30s, and was publishing. Yeah, there was like an ASIO report from like the 60s that was publishing like all these things that the Communist Party wanted to do for like other nationalities.
Yeah, that's definitely pretty cool. Do you think like they lacks like a common enemy? Is that why the left can't really sort of coalesce around one party? Because wasn't it in the 1930s when was it Sharkey or
Lance Sharkey?
Yeah, they were like in the movement against fascism or something in Australia, so they all like sort of had this one huge enemy and they sort of went against it and joined up together. Do we need like some huge big Satanist enemy like the United States to hate or something? Or
I don't know. That's a like a good question. I think from my perspective at least, I think the biggest problem is neoliberalism, at least at the moment, is that since introducing neoliberal policies in the 70s and like the Accord from the 80s, I don't know if people know much about like the history of trade unions in Australia.
Do you want to could you explain the Accord? Because we do have some non-Australians. It's pretty important. So yeah, if you want to lay it out, that'd be great.
So yeah, the Accord was like this agreement between the Australian Council of Trade Unions and the Labor Party in Australia, and it tried to introduce like I'm trying to remember. Sorry, it's like tried to introduce like a social wage, and
Social contract, yeah.
And instead of, so like originally when trade unions fought for like better conditions, then the most militant trade union kind of acted as like this leverage to pull up weaker trade unions from different industries. And then eventually like you introduce like EBA, so it kind of like shut off trade unions from each other. And instead of like a trade union winning some conditions that apply to workers, it would be like a trade union wins conditions that applies to this specific industry under like EBA agreements.
Like EBA is an enterprise bargaining agreement, so it's like when all the employees in that sort of agency, they meant to collectively bargain. But from what I've seen, everyone's just sort of like, yeah, whatever, just sign it every year. Yeah. Like every 3 years, is it? Yeah. Like no one really cares. Yeah.
Yeah. So the point is that the unions at that point are now divided. So a certain trade can get really good conditions, while a bunch of others, for example, retail, are still living with really shitty wages. And I don't my understanding from the Accord was it was a deal with the unions and Labor Party not to strike in exchange for, Medicare or something.
Yeah, well, like not being able to strike as well has kind of been like a I don't know, like a defining factor of like unions in Australia, where it's like, at least in Australia you can't strike when you've signed an EBA agreement. And like this is like, I think even back to like the early 1900s arbitration. So like kind of turning unions into like forcing them into like legality has been around since like a lot longer than the Accord. But yeah, with the Accord you have like this social wage. It sounds like good on paper, but it like didn't really work out, I guess, in real life. But this social wage is like had things like superannuation and like Medicare, so like healthcare, and all these things kind of like tied in this social wage that would, I guess, like increase like by certain amounts or whatever. There's like some statistics I've seen of showing like before the Accord you had trade union like density, so the amount of like people who were in trade unions compared to, I guess, like the labor force, it was like sitting around 50%, and then it's like you come to it like drops right after the Accord, and then you get to like now where it's like around like 10 to 15% or something. So yeah, I guess going back to the original like question, I think like the biggest thing that's like stopping a more like militant and like united left is that like trade unions are just like shackled and there's not enough people in them. And
and then we got new laws come in. There's now like the Fair Work Ombudsman, which is basically another way to, I mean, it's so long, the history of basically there's like, Wales work rights and all that stuff. Basically new laws set by Liberals, and Labor tried to remove it, but they didn't really go any far because they were basically neolibs as well. They pretended to care. And we also got fake unions like the SDA. I bet Regan has a lot to say about that one.
Yeah, well, I think now's a good...
Are you in the SDA?
No. He hates them.
So I am a solidarity member with RAFU, the Retail and Fast Food Workers Union, which if you talk to the Friendly Geordies or the secretary of the ACTU, it's not a real union apparently, but it is a damn good union, and it's doing way better than SDA, which is crawling with white South Africans in leadership, and plenty of others who are homophobic. They're just conservative socially. They're super in bed with Woolworths and Coles
McDonald's
farmers. Yeah, they're super tied in. They share the board with the superannuation companies. They share with the leadership of the corporation. So it's a union completely. What do you call it? A bosses union, whatever.
Yellow union.
Yeah,
Yellow union. Yeah.
You need a name basically. It's just there. It's like it's actually controlled opposition. That's probably the best way to describe it.
I saw this.
And
sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, in a similar way to Socialist Alternative, the SDA is often the first union anyone in Australia comes across, because we all work in retail from the age of 15, and you quickly learn that the SDA sucks, and you might think that all unions suck. I don't know.
No, you're right, mate. When I first worked at Mac as a 17, SDA rep signed me up, and they did nothing, mate. Like I was just like, because I heard unions were meant to give you a good wage, right? So when I was 18, I was getting paid, I think it was like $14 an hour.
Yeah.
Below award. And that did not make sense to me. And I still had to pay a percentage of my wage to union dues, which gave me nothing at all.
Oh.
So that kind of turned me off like 100% when I was like 17, 18. Yeah. It's just a scam.
No, they actively campaigned against the legalizing gay marriage like 2 years ago or whatever. They dominated Labor for a long time to make sure that Labor was conservative up until until they had no choice. But I just want to talk about RAFU a second, because they're so fucking cool. They took Macca's to court, and just this week the courts decided that Macca's has to give its workers the opportunity to go to the toilet while they're working.
Yeah, I saw that, and I saw RAFU saying I can't believe this has to be a decision now in 2020. But yeah, that's just that's absolutely fright that they had to take Macca's to court, so then workers, all these young workers, could go to the bathroom.
That's some Charles Dickens shit.
I mean, they helped Macca's cut pay, SDA in this year in May on 22nd, when there was the coronavirus going on. They actually helped Macca's cut pay. They allowed them to cut regular shifts of permanent part-time employees down to 8 hours when people needed the money the most. That's how fake of a union they are.
Yeah, they just casualized all these part-time workers.
Yeah. And I don't know how they can still exist. And the fact that so many Victorian Labor members actually part of SDA-backed members of Parliament, like Richard Marles and stuff.
Right.
Yeah. And I think he's deputy leader, one of the deputy leaders, in the Senate or
something.
Yeah,
well, the retail union, SDA, it's a stepping stone to the Labor Party.
Pretty much.
So that tells you all you need to know.
I also want to give a shout out to RAFU. They did such a good job down here in Melbourne when I guess this the second wave was starting up, and one of the first few places was there was a cluster in McDonald's, and it was 12 different McDonald's up in the north and the west of Melbourne, and RAFU the whole time we were campaigning and doing all these shame campaigns. One that sticks with me is that McDonald's was providing staff with hand sanitizer that didn't have the right ethanol content to protect them from the virus, but was selling hand sanitizer with the correct ethanol content to both staff and customers if they wanted it. It's just dodgy shit.
Yeah. Fast food in Australia, and I guess it's probably anywhere in the world, so many kids come out of that with burns on their arms and scars, and it's it's treated like it's something, it's a privilege to have, and that everyone should be lucky to do it, but it's not fair on kids. And in Australia, as Timur mentioned, I think when you're under 18, you get paid 50% of the minimum wage.
Yep.
And then you turn 18 and it gets to 75 or whatever. It slowly goes up. So, it's kids, it's child labor, and and they're underpaying them.
And they allow this kind of practices because, if you're over 20 one, I think, and you try to apply for a job at, say, like H&M or Macca's, they will just shut you down and find someone who's like 15 because they can pay way less.
That happened to me, like, I like worked in like a fish and chip shop when I was like 15 to like, I don't know, like 21 or something. And like, so I was like that kid with like burns up their arms and shit. And then like I tried to get a job in like a restaurant, like doing some like, I don't know, like waiting. And this guy is like, so the person who worked there like recommended me specifically because they'd seen me work at like the fish and chip shop and how like I was a really good worker. And then I went and like the main boss was like, I'm sorry, why would we pay you when we could just pay when you're going to leave in a few years because like you're this age, when we can pay like someone who's 15 and have them on for like cheaper and for longer. And I was just like so crushed.
Yeah, it's just how can this is the biggest services union in Australia, and they just let these laws come where they can exploit child labor. Like when I was back to Macca's, when I was 18, a guy died in the toilet in Macca's, and I had to carry him out. He's like a dead dude.
What the fuck?
Yeah, and I didn't know my
fuck.
rights, so the boss is like, yo, you're the only guy on shift, so you gotta do it, man. And I was also the youngest guy, and I'm like, okay, and I just carried the guy. You know, a dead guy's sort of heavy when he's like a trade. He's like 100 kilograms, and I just had to drag him. Yeah, but
That's
anyway.
That's traumatic.
Yeah, and apparently that's just part of the job because like I asked the person and the manager, she's like, yeah, you know, someone just dies. I used to work at Dano Macca's, people just die all the time. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, people just do drugs and die. It's just what you do. Yeah, so yeah, that Macca's toilet, someone probably died in that toilet. It's pretty harsh, yeah. But anyway, it just talks about the lack of labor rights in Australia in general.
Yeah. So.
I mean, we're better than America, of course, which I don't even know what they can have there, but yeah.
We do have a couple of good unions now, so I think despite see, they're cool. They're like super militant, but they're I'm pretty sure might have to double check, but like they're not on board with like climate change mitigation. They so many of the members work in mining and stuff, so they actually just left the Labor left faction. I don't know much about inner Labor politics, but Labor Party has its factions, and I guess each of those factions has a couple of unions tied to it.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure where CFMEU is going. Maybe you might know about that.
I had a look actually. It turns out Richard Marles is actually TW, so that's like Qantas Transport and all that. But yeah, SDA, it seems like a quarter of the Labor right is SDA or AWU.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Those are two main factions. And basically the right pretty much dominates. I mean, I know Albanese is meant to be part of the left, who's the current leader of Labor, but he's trying to pretend to be a Liberal member, basically. So.
And he's from the left faction. That's incredible. That's so sad.
Yeah. Because the Labor left faction, I actually used to be part of that, and it's meant to be called the Socialist left faction, but it doesn't seem to be very socialist right now. Because what are they trying to advocate for? Is it like they try to be basically what Malcolm Turnbull was a few years ago?
That's what the like ALP left want to be.
Yeah, that's what he looks like at the moment. They're like, oh, we support caging people in Nauru steel. But a bit less than liberals, kind of like that. But,
not even liberals want that. He's the most unpopular person ever, like.
Yeah, I know. It's just I don't know why no one wants that, but they still do it at both parties. Yeah.
You see, like lately, I've seen people floating around saying that Bill Shorten was Australia's Bernie Sanders.
I mean, he's better than Albanese, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean. That's an indictment of how far right America is, that their most left person is like hardcore centrist in Australia.
I mean, he was closer to the unions than most Labor leaders. I mean, Shorten, so that's about it.
I remember when Albanese, when we heard that he was going to be like the opposition leader, and like one of the first things he did was quote from like some Billy Bragg song. Billy Bragg being like, a songwriter from England who like sung about being in the union or whatever, and everyone
Yeah.
was like, finally a left leader in the ALP, and then now he's like saying that JobKeeper is to blame for like all this like government spending because it's too high or whatever.
Oh yeah, and he's talking about all these deficit stuff, like trying to fight the Liberals on the deficit. Yeah, you got like to stop government spending. Yeah, it's just such a. I mean, we're just printing more money. Who cares? Just do it. Just give me like.
But just with that,
yeah.
and with that Billy Bragg thing, he's also a DJ, known as DJ Elbow. I think he did a set up in Brisbane.
Oh yeah, that's his meme.
Within the last couple of years, that's how he like tries to connect with like millennials. Yeah. Thankfully, half of millennials can see through it, and then I think all of Zoomers know it's bullshit. But yeah, he has tried.
What's this DJ Elbow thing? Can you explain that more?
I've never
heard of this.
It's like a meme. Every time I remember Elbow would come down to Melbourne, Albanese, and all the kids were like, "Oh, DJ Elbow, gotta do the biggest sick tracks. You play it." And so every time he comes to like something, he actually gets like a set and plays like a. You look up the photos on it. It just looks like the most "Hello, fellow kids" meme kind of thing.
I can't believe I didn't even know about this.
Yeah.
And that it's real. Oh wow.
Okay,
there's videos.
Like, it's so cringe.
He did like a warehouse show in Brisbane. I'm just looking now, it was 2015. But sure, I'm pretty sure he did maybe the Foundry or something at Brisbane, which is like probably the best indie venue.
Oh really?
And I'm just looking at a photo now. He's wearing a scarf. What does it say? Rock Dogs. So he was. I guess I don't know much about it, but there's like, what is it, the ALP Dank Meme Stash or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they force this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I still can't believe I never even knew this. There's like one video that comes up from like one of like the morning news programs, and like the caption is like political spin, and then it's Albo like DJing, and it's so cringy.
Yeah, it's just it doesn't hit the spot. Because what's that guy? What's ScoMo's thing? The Daggy Dad. That gets the spot. That's what Australians want, because no one cares about politics in Australia except for people like us who are really neurotic all the time. Yeah. Most people just want to like, I don't know, go to Bali and be racist. That's what Australians are, sadly. But that's what they just want. This guy who's like a loser dad. He doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, someone that they can make memes out of. That's all they care about.
Yeah, I mean, no one knows what ScoMo does. He just like wears a shark's cap and puts his thumbs up. Yeah, it's like Bojo. This is like the new trend. Just drop kick old dudes. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's fascinating. It's enjoyable for me to watch the American presidential race from afar because I'm not affected, and then as soon as I finish looking at that train wreck, I turn to Australia and I see the exact same thing, in that Labor doesn't have policies that are different to the Liberals, and it's just all aesthetics.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be a bit different back in the day, but now it's just getting closer and closer to the Lib Lab meme. And then you got the actual left, which is just, as Bri has described, like, I don't know, 10 parties, 20 parties now.
Yeah, there's a lot of parties. And yeah, like trade unions have just been like, I don't know, just absolutely gutted from neoliberal policies.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, I got my mates who are very well educated, and they hate the unions for some reason. They're like, oh, they're all racist and thugs. And I'm like, really? What do you hear that from? I was like, yeah, I saw it on News Corp. And I'm like, oh. It's just, the media as well. It doesn't help, because we get so much American media. We basically start becoming American now. We become Americanized everywhere. Even like our public healthcare is becoming like Obamacare, like all these private healthcare stuff coming in. Yeah. I mean, I got private healthcare only because I get a huge rebate back that it's basically free for me at the end of the year, and that's how stupid it is, the system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to talk about Geordies or?
Not really, to be honest. I think we've done it. I mean, if so we keep it brief. I hate them so fucking much.
True.
Yeah, and I don't want to get into it and be like, I don't know,
I mean, he
rampage.
thrives on this, he gets views,
Yeah.
he gets money, and Labour loves him for it because, he gets to fund up the SDA.
Yeah.
What the hell? I mean, he's never called out the SDA after all this time. That's how you know he's a shield. But
He takes their fucking money.
Yeah, maybe he should be like, oh, SDA, like association. What is association? That's not a union. But no,
Yeah.
we don't hear that.
Oh yeah, are you guys in corporate association by any chance? No.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to talk about Foudy, but that's hard to talk about. Like, the whole thing is just keeps going on. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not stopping.
Well, let's give a quick shout out to our haters. If you've managed to listen this far into the episode, yeah, because we know they do listen.
Alex Turnbull? Nah.
Well.
Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about NBN.
Nah, we don't talk about that, man. Yeah, let's. Aunt BB, who's very stable and genius.
So I actually reached out to Aunt BB when the Brian Kerr thing happened because she has been all over it. She was talking about that last year. She was getting it from that Hong Kong journalist
Badachi.
Fitachi, yeah.
Yeah.
So I reached out to her and I was like, oh yeah, what do you know? She didn't know anything more than what was already going around. But I think since then, she's sort of become a part of the China Twitter community. And she doesn't like us. She thinks the whole Grey Zone project is a CIA front or something.
I mean, the whole thing, they're being called anti-American, which is hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really wild. I wish she had a bigger profile.
What was that Bri brought up? The BOM thing she said?
Oh, she thinks that BLM is like a color revolution orchestrated by the US against itself or something. I don't even know.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Why would the US do that to themselves? It's just who knows?
Oh, well, I mean, I totally believe that there's a million spooks all through, those organizations. But it's Black Lives Matter. The idea itself is not a creation of cops. You know?
No, yeah, there's like a big difference between like a color revolution like funded by the CIA and Ned and shit, and like a genuine movement being co-opted by liberals. Like
yes,
yeah.
And the fact that the CIA and Ned they're funding an organization to still keep on going, creating this much issues for the American government when their whole project is to secure American interests. It doesn't make sense. And she also denies climate change. She says it's a corporation way to dismiss that the 1% causes a lot of pollution. I mean, that's true. They cause the most pollution, but you can't say it's a corporate hoax. That's
and the tweet that she quote tweeted, that one that you're talking about,
Radia
is
Kalak.
like
it's
like the quote. The original tweet is saying that it's like about like it's like an economic problem, which I assumed means like capitalism is causing climate change, and then like I don't know, then to say like, oh, it's the 1%, it's like that's what the original tweet was like saying.
Yeah.
So I think she sees liberals saying the same things that actual leftists will say, and she doesn't understand there's a difference there. And I think that is kind of tied in. I'm not sure if this is connected, but with the other drama that's been all over China Twitter, is the word SJW has been getting thrown around a lot, which I haven't seen since Gamergate, really, because yeah, I don't want to talk about
Apparently,
specifically why.
especially what I've been doing is defending a 16-year-old girl who was a victim of grooming, is a social justice warrior, and that's just horrible. So all these 4-year-old aunties and uncles should be attacking her non-stop and saying that she seducted Tom Fowdy, who I might say is the most handsome man I've ever met.
Most handsome and most famous.
Yeah. I don't know how that's SJW. If that's an SJW, I am, because I am against grooming in general. It's just wrong. And the fact even if you say there's only been one victim that's under 18, that is still grooming. It doesn't change that doesn't change the issue.
Yeah, but with this, I think I've been saying it to you a lot, and I've also seen people saying this is identity politics. So they're also getting blown way off course. They
what's his name?
be a leftist and understand that, well, even intersectionality aside, that there is fucking gross scumbags out there. It's been a total mess.
Yeah, it is. Like that Sol Taeyong guy, he's changed the topic to that this is actually a front to be racist to white people to get Tom Fowdy out somehow. It's actually nothing to do with pedophilia.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up, because as a white person, and I've always wanted to say that, there is not an issue with anti-white, inverted commas, racism on Twitter and even on China Twitter. I'm openly white.
Oh no.
On Twitter, and I don't think anyone can confuse. And I don't see any of that stuff, and I don't cop it. I think it is weird. There seems to be a few white people, I don't know, like younger dudes.
Yeah, this is a guy doing yellow face as well, which makes it even
it's always
worse.
dudes. Sorry, I was going to say, they're always dudes, and they seem like they're alt-right, and I think they're coming here just to troll us all, because they're pretending they set up these yellow face accounts. It's classic 4chan trolling. So
I think it's like as well they are trying to distance themselves from the SJWs and the liberals in the West or something. They're like, oh, it will be better in China where there's no SJWs or something. I don't know. That seems to be the kind of mindset these people have.
I agree.
That's a really good point. I didn't think of that. Because I think a lot of pro-China Twitter, I think there's there's a leftist section, and then there's also a nationalist part, putting aside nationality, ethnicities in there. And this is where there's
who think that it's real, like what China's doing, what the press reports. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going to be difficult for people. I mean, not that I consider myself a part of pro-China Twitter, someone who observes it. These different groups, these conflicts are always going to be there. They're never going to reconcile them, I don't think.
Yeah, it's just crazy because, these people, the more accusations come out, the more they double down and say it's obvious that Ilan, who's a 16-year-old girl born in China, lived there for 13 years and moved to America 3 years ago, is a CIA agent who's been planning this since January, which is a crazy idea. But if she is, then I'm gonna say props to her, because that's amazing.
If she is, it just shows how easily that these people can get fooled by it. If this guy who's getting into her DMs with some creepy shit, how easily is this fucking pro-China movement gonna be destroyed by?
Yeah. You become a groomer by being DM'd by an underage girl. Then you go on and message 14 yellow women and do the same thing, where you're selling your clothes pop off during mid-conversation. Very cringe. But I guess when you're handsome, that just happens. Yeah. I mean, Bri, since you're a actual woman, that's probably a lot more serious in this regard. All these victim blaming. Yeah.
Oh yeah, just as well, seeing the grooming happen, I was like, oh yeah, I don't know. I've experienced grooming before, probably like multiple times, and it's like, and it's fucked because it's like you don't want to be rude, but you don't want to just tell someone like fuck off, and especially like Tom Foudy, like he set it up like so that he was gonna publish Elon, and then started being like talking about nudes and shit. Like, my, I just like cringe so much at that. It's just like so disgusting. And people like say that the people like post a screenshot and be like, "Where's the evidence?" It's like, do you not just see this grown man say to this underage girl that he'd like she should be in a nudes chat? Like
in the communist nudes chat. That's my theory, that a lot of these people that are defending Foudy actually did post in the nude chat and posted the nudes there. So that's why they have to double down now, no matter what.
They don't want the nudes chat to get exposed.
Because he actually admitted it, that it 100% exists. But I mean, I'm not gonna kink shame. I'm not gonna kink shame. That's fair, fine. You guys share your nudes. Just do it. Don't force people into it. Yeah.
No, I think something that hasn't gone down on Twitter, and you guys have just mentioned then, is there was a power imbalance there. It
100%.
wasn't just age. It was a guy like, hey, I'm offering you work. So of course she's gonna be fucking nice.
Yeah. He's been on TV. Yeah. that just seems ultra cool to someone at 16. You know, you're on TV, you're on the news. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of power. Like, what is she gonna do? Like, gonna attack him? Who's gonna believe her? Like, no one's believing her right now, even with the receipts. Yeah.
So it does feel like if there's any women in the pro-China Twitter community feeling uncomfortable about something someone said to them, this would not make them feel like they could ever be comfortable coming out with that.
Yeah. And as Bri said, it's very hard to open up and say, can you please go away, when there's older men and you're a younger woman and they have the power over you, you know. It's not that simple.
Yeah, and it's also like so hard to like come out and say it even after the fact, because like as people will be saying like, oh, why didn't you just say it at the time, or like why did you wait so long to like to talk about it, or like, oh, you're just like making shit up. And like the amount of times that like I've talked to like friends who have gone to similar things, it's always like the person who's like on the other side of like grooming or abuse or whatever, they just like get kicked out of like whatever circle they shared, and then like they'll lose friends or they'll lose like professional contacts or like anything like this, and then the abuser just like gets to like go on with like his life. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, Foudy's just gonna like, this is just, everyone's gonna forget about this, and Foudy's just, maybe he'll get like kicked off of like whatever platform he has now, and you just go find a new one and continue to be who he is. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, Libertarians of Asian Wives, head writer. Or I can join the Salman Rouge gang. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, that's a really good point, Bri. Like you search Google Tom Foudy, it doesn't come up with that. It just comes up with like his news stories that he's written for Chinese media.
Yeah, I've only seen this on Twitter. It's nowhere else. Like, and I don't know, Twitter isn't always real life. You know, the next time he applies for a job, are they going to be like, well, actually, I saw like this Twitter drama and I don't want to hire you. That's like not going to happen.
Yeah, you got ratioed, man. You get out of here.
I hate to say it, but his refusal to apologize or even acknowledge anything wrong,
and he doxed Elon as well.
Yeah, it's worked, and he's come out of this, but I mean, his replies will always be a mess from now on, but that doesn't matter. You know,
it's
he has
like,
write-ups.
What's his name? CJ Wellyman. Every time he talks, he'll bring up the receipts, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And lastly, we talk about Senzo. Just one comment. Like, I don't care if you call me gay. That's cool. Yeah, pretty much. Just keep going.
What a feminine voice you have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty gay. I gotta admit it.
I would be lucky to be your boyfriend.
Yeah, all good.
Thanks for coming on the show, Bri.
Oh, no way.
Definitely
Thanks for chatting.
琼花间里，歌曲人影稀。谁知明日时分里，台上望珍惜。唱一曲别离，谁在君怀里？昨日相依，今夜又相离，各离乡。